It's Thanksgiving 2020, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. One of the nice things of not being together physically is that you can't tell me when to stop talking. That being said, my speech will be longer than usual, and you can take your time and watch this video along with some photos at your convenience. I decided to honor my parents, who, after all, are the reason all of us are here today, and piece together some thoughts of what I remember life was like growing up. My dad, Francis Edmund Nolan, was born on June 16, 1918. He was the only son and had 3 sisters, Elizabeth, Julia, and Florence. He lost his sister Julia at 9 years of age to complications of scarlet fever shortly after the family, on the advice of doctors, moved out to Los Angeles. The train of thought was the climate would lengthen her life. After they moved back to Philadelphia, my dad worked as a young boy at his parents' fruit stand. My grandfather worked outside on the telephone poles for Bell Telephone Company. After retiring, my grandfather was the apartment manager for the Elizabeth Arms Apartments in Upper Darby. My dad's parents died only a day apart on May 6th and May 7th, 1964, after 52 years of marriage. My mother, Margaret Ann Schock, was born on November 26, 1921. Today would have been her 99th birthday. She had 1 brother, 3 sisters, and 2 stepbrothers. My parents met at Onley High School, where my dad was a member of the cross-country track team, and in his younger years was apparently a well-known shooting marbles champion. My mother was a member of the Onley High women's basketball team. They attended their senior prom together, as you will see in the photo montage. My father took a road trip with several guys to Yellowstone National Park and the Grand Canyon after graduation and spoke about a surprise visit from a bear, where they all had to jump on the roof of the car for safety. The photos are proof this actually happened. My parents eloped on December 21st, 1939. My mom was 18, my dad was 21. They lived with my grandparents and their younger siblings for a few years. Patty, Franny, Dookie, and Georgie grew up surrounded by aunts, uncles in a very, very tight living situation. My earliest memories are of 401 West Wellens Avenue. My Aunt Doll and Uncle John lived right across the alley from us. The Shaddocks were everyday playmates, and Bubby, to this day, is still one of my best friends. We walked to Catholic school, Inky, and came home every day for lunch, as there was no cafeteria. You respected your parents, teachers, and elders. Cursing was taboo, no matter how old you were. We wore uniforms and black and white saddle shoes and regularly used white shoe polish to keep them clean, as you knew that pair had to last the whole year. The boys wore a suit jacket, tie, and dress pants. Our student ratio was 1 nun to 45 to 50 kids. The Pledge of Allegiance was said at the beginning of each day, along with the singing of our national anthem. After school, we would rush home to do chores and our homework, and we were then able to watch our 1 black and white TV. The shows then were Mickey Mouse Club, Bugs Bunny, Felix the Cat, Tom and Jerry, Captain Kangaroo, and, of course, American Bandstand was a huge favorite because it came out of Philly. We all had to help my mom bring the washing from the line, as they couldn't afford a dryer in those days. In the winter, your jeans would literally stand up on their own, so you had to place them in front of the radiator to dry. Cloth diapers appeared on almost every clothesline, as large families were in style. Nothing was wrinkle-free, so the basket of ironing seemed like a big black hole with our large crew. I earned spending money in later years by spray starching and ironing my brother Duke's boxer shorts and shirts. He was a very sharp dresser. I used my extra money to buy 45 singles, which were around 70 cents at the time. My mom was a fantastic cook and baker, and dinners consisted of meat, potatoes, vegetables, bread, and always some type of dessert every night. Some of my brothers worked shift work, so you had to reheat things in the oven. No microwave, no dishwashers. The girls washed and the guys dried. Hand-me-down clothes, especially christening outfits and communion dresses, were essential as money was tight, but no one ever complained. My mom was a terrific seamstress, and one summer she made all the girls' cousins matching gingham summer shifts in a variety of colors. We loved them. Most families owned one car, so we walked most places. In Onley, you shopped in small grocery stores and delis. Art and Vise was the name of the small store near our house, and my mom would send us with a list of items which they would handwrite a receipt for you, and you would make payments when payday came around. There were no credit cards. Your reputation in the neighborhood was your credit. Our parents sat on the front steps when we were out playing, and I remember my mom and grandma routinely scrubbing the concrete with their scrubbing brushes on their hands and knees. You stayed out in the summer until the streetlights turned on, playing Red Rover, Red Light, Green Light, Simon Says, Hide and Seek, etc. Life was certainly simpler, but that doesn't always mean better. We had just one bathroom with a tub, no shower. On weekends, you raced as fast as you could to get washed before the hot water ran out, and you were using the same bath water as whoever got in before you. Family was an integral part of our lives, even outside the bathtub. Every Saturday, my Aunt Gladys and Uncle Levi came down from Lancaster to their Fifth Street Market, where they ran a poultry stand. Everything was fresh, and for years, we continued to order our Thanksgiving turkey from them. Several of my relatives, including my mom, Franny and Patty, and Uncle Johnny Shattuck, worked there at some point in their lives. Fifth Street was the big shopping mecca district, and on Saturdays, my sister Patty would take Timmy and I, along with her girlfriends, to Woolworth's for some ice cream. You could always tell which girls had a date that night, as they would have their hair in huge curlers with a big bandana tied around. No flat irons, curling irons, or blow dryers to be had. Every Saturday, my Aunt Dolly made spaghetti and meatballs, along with sliced deli Jewish pickles and Italian bread. Everybody had a standing invitation. In 1962, we moved to the wide-open spaces of Northeast Philly, my parents' first single house with a large backyard. We lived 2 houses down from Pennypack Woods, where we rode bikes, sledded down hills, picked lilacs, and made play forts. We also contracted a lot of poison ivy and poison oak. My brother Billy slid into a tree one year and had a huge open wound on the front of his leg, which seemed to take forever to heal. He was a real trooper, as it was quite painful. He probably should have gone to the hospital, but we just couldn't afford it. My dad would always bribe you with the promise of ice cream, which seemed to make everything feel better in those days. He loved ice cream. He told me once that he had only one birthday party. It was around when he turned 8. One of the boys replied that he couldn't come, so my grandma brought 1 pack of 8 Dixie cups, 1 for each of the 7 boys, and 1 for the birthday boy. Well, you guessed it, the 8th child showed up, so my dad had to forfeit his Dixie cup. He spent the rest of his life making up for that one mistake. Most nights you would walk in from work or a date, and he would say, "Hey, hun, your dad could go for a little dish of ice cream." He neglected to tell you that whoever was home before you got the same request. When my brother George worked for Mr. Softy and he brought you a soft serve, he would always say, "It's dripping, give it to Daddy, and he'll take a lick and fix it." When you got older, you caught on that your cone was quite a bit smaller when he gave it back to you. You learned to lick the sides really fast. Every February, he would take us for a ride down to Ocean City to walk the boards. Hardly anything was open, but on the ride home, you got to eat dinner at Howard Johnson's, which had 28 flavors of ice cream. He would go insane now with all the different flavors available. It wasn't just ice cream that he loved, though. Every Saturday morning was a trip to Bauer's Bakery on Bustleton Avenue for cream donuts with actual cream, ice crumb cake, and snowflake rolls. When my aunts visited from Virginia or Maryland, they would always take Bauer's back home with them. My dad was always an optimist and tried to see the good in everyone. He said, if you can't find something nice to say about someone, then don't say anything at all. He was a bit of a tease, and as a teenager, if a boy called you on the phone in your house, he would tell them that you're already in bed, even if it was only 8:30 at night. He always carried a pocket full of change and would tell the Forest boys if you kissed his big toe, which he would proclaim hadn't been washed in quite a while, he would give you some pocket change. Of course, he had a sock on and it was clean, but the boys fell for it hook, line, and sinker every time. You also got the change, whether you did it or not. He was a man of great integrity, honesty, and respected by his peers. We were expected to follow in his footsteps. My dad was the chief inspector of the Philadelphia police. His nickname was No Note Nolan because he would never take a bribe. He would never use his job as a police officer for any personal gain. He told us when we left the house we better be on our best behavior, and if we were stopped by a police officer for anything, we were not to use his name, but rather deal with the consequences. As funny as he was, my dad was a very hard worker. He spent years attending night school for various degrees, and at one point actually graduated from LaSalle, along with my brother Dookie, which was a pretty special occasion. Behind every great man is a great woman. My dad worked long hours, so it was my mom who held down the fort and was the disciplinarian. She kind of stayed more in the background, and I always felt she did not have a great deal of confidence in herself. Why, I have no idea, as she had so many wonderful attributes. The sound of her voice when she read you a story was like a lullaby. She had a beautiful singing voice and encouraged my sister Terry to take weekly lessons from our neighbor up the hill. Anyone that has heard Terry sing knows how gifted she is. She became president of the Bustleton Boys Club, which is where Timmy and Billy played ball. She hosted many penny parties and fundraisers where she handmade the decorations, and those events produced generous funds to keep the club going. Her sewing skills were phenomenal, and often our Easter attire and fancy dresses for some of the weddings were made by my mom. Every year, Olney held a 4th of July celebration where we all won top prizes for the floats and costumes that my mom had made. She helped clean Maternity BVM's church and always seemed to have a rag or Windex in her hand. Her floors were done on her hands and knees. I guess we know where I inherited my cleaning skills. She seldom took time for herself, as her children and my dad were her life. My dad adored his Margie, and Margie adored her Frank. They were known as Sis and Fen throughout the family. She loved hosting big family events, and in the summer our vinyl pool was overflowing with the Shock family children. Her favorite holiday was Christmas, and every year she would sew stockings by hand, which we would decorate with glitter and fill with candy and toys for kids in the orphanage in downtown Philadelphia. Our picture window had several panes, each with silver garland and a red or green glass ball in the center. The outside of the house would be decorated with red and green lights, as well as all the shrubs. The only way she got a break during the Christmas season was when my dad would pack us all into a pink and white station wagon with no seatbelts and the back window wide open so we could breathe and take us to look at all the Christmas lights. In the early years, my dad and brother sold Christmas trees on the sidewalk in Olney to get extra cash for our own trees. Years later, when Franny bought his place in Camelot Forest in the Poconos, he would cut a tree down for us by hand and deliver it in time for the holiday. The tradition in those days was to decorate the tree on Christmas Eve. Tinsel was a must, and when we were small, we would glob it on, but by morning she would have painstakingly redone it one strand at a time. Then it was off to midnight mass where the girls sang in the choir and the boys were altar servers. When you were old enough to date, significant others were invited to breakfast right after midnight mass. Then we would be up at the crack of dawn to see what Santa had brought. They were usually small things like Play-Doh, board games, Chatty Cathy, Matchbox cars, G.I. Joe. But every once in a while, somebody got a brand new bike. They always made the effort to get you at least one or two things you really wanted, and she always kept extra gifts upstairs in case people you were dating brought her something. She was a very generous person. Christmas dinner in the early days was always at Grandmom and Grandpop Shock's. They had a small home on Somerville Avenue, and we ate in shifts in order to have enough places at the table. The Nolans had the last shift, as we had the largest crew. My Grandpop Shock, who was also a policeman, will put his tree on a platform with a train running underneath. However, most years you couldn't touch it because he would tell you it still wasn't finished yet, and this drove my grandmom totally insane. During Christmas week, the tradition was to visit each of my aunts and uncles' houses to look at their gifts and have coffee, tea, soda, and dessert, and get to enjoy their tree and the lights outside. My Uncle Ed and Aunt Mary's house was lit up like the Griswolds with a plastic Santa all the way up on the rooftop. Tree stands were cheaply constructed, and there were many Christmases when you would hear the tree fall down and my dad had to use rope to tie it to the wall. Since Santa had to come down a chimney, and most homes had none, we had cardboard ones with black cardboard mantles. The idea was to hang your stocking on these flimsy inventions and expect them to stay up. As soon as you filled the stocking with anything weighing more than a candy bar, it came crashing down. Eventually, we learned to hang our stockings on the railing going up the steps. Life when I was growing up was full of family, and holidays were more about tradition and coming together than anything else. I'm so happy that we've all been able to continue those traditions long after Mom and Dad are gone. After all, they started it all. Now it's our turn to create lasting holiday memories. Our family has grown, and my parents would be so proud of all that their children, grandchildren, and dozens of great-grandchildren have accomplished. Mom and Dad, we love you and miss you. Patty, we know you are there with them, watching over all of us during this trying holiday season. Please give a warm hug to my grandson, Benjamin Francis. A special thank you to my son, Colin William Coyle, who allowed me to do this in his soundproof booth and help me with the editing, and to Lori Shattuck, who provided some of the old photographs.